It's time. It's episode 54 of the ATM podcast. I love this part of the show on Tuesdays. Get to lock horns with the good old mate, Mark Watson and Watto. You're going to spell the word wrong, and you're going to spell it with an F and it ends in an R, but we'll get on to Fozzie and the All Blacks shortly. You're commentating the Invictus games. This is a very special event set up by Prince Harry. It is for war vets, those that have been both physically, emotionally, spiritually busted up by conflict. And so, very special event indeed.
Yeah, very honoured to be part of just one team commentators from around the world, having the privilege to call these very special games, which have been going since 2014. You summed it up nicely. Yeah, really just a chance for those that have been, as you said, psychologically or physically impaired by war, and giving them that opportunity to aspire. For some of them, it is simply about participation. For others, clearly trying to pick up medals. And it's been going since 2014. These are the sixth Invictus Games. 21 countries. New Zealand's got representation there, 10 different sports in all. And so to be, and actually, ironically, broadcasting what we call remotely now, Martin. So I'm actually doing it from my living room at home, even though you would believe that I am in Dusseldorf in Germany, so that's sort of where I guess commentary's going now with the technology. Part of it is about, believe it or not, in all seriousness, some of it, clearly that cost cutting, but a lot of it is also to do with these companies just wanting to make their bit in and around carbon emissions, etc.
Apologise to me!
Can the All Blacks, before we get on to Ian Foster, and your obsession with blaming the coach, and look, it's not that I can entirely disagree with you, but I also believe that we have a very average bunch of players at the moment who need to be held accountable and take some responsibility. But can we win it from here? Justin Marshall on the show earlier today saying, yes, we can. Do you believe him?
Look, I think whoever wins the two quarterfinals out of this side of the draw are your finalists. So if it's France, say, go and beat Ireland, France will be in the final. If Ireland beat France, Ireland will be in the final, and same whether it be South Africa, New Zealand, or however that draw works. So I think the four teams on this side of the draw in the quarterfinals, the two winners of those quarterfinals are your finalists. Now, if New Zealand get through their quarterfinal, I can see us in the final. And if you're in the final, you do have a chance. My concern is, Martin, we've said this previously, we've just had so much rest and rotation, so much experimentation with our starting lineup and our combinations, and we just haven't had the same team play together three massive games in the space of 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's the worry, mate.
I think that is where the asterisk needs to go. I think that's the mistake we've made. Does this team have the ability to play three massive games in the space of 2 weeks? If you go back over the last 3 to 4 years, I think history will say, or the evidence is on the table to say, no, we can't.
We can't.
Can we make the World Cup final? I think we can. Can we win a World Cup? I just don't think we are good enough. But we've turned up to World Cups previously with the best teams on paper, and we haven't won it. And I think we've seen lesser teams win World Cups. And so that gives you that little bit of hope.
Ian Foster. Well, Shag's now in camp after being with Eddie Jones. Jason Ryan speaking today, saying that, he's just having a good look around. We've got every single brain that we could possibly have there on site. So is it just down to one man? Because I heard you on the weekend, I saw you rave and you point the finger at Ian Foster. And look, I do understand why people do that, but I also think it's very cheap because it's an easy out. When you've got players that are replacing first-choice All Black players who don't step up to the mark, what we're looking at is we're looking at an All Black squad which is mostly average. We don't have a lot of world-class players at the moment. And you can sit there and say, hey, this coach would turn Anton Leonard-Brown into the best second five in the world. I'd say bollocks, mate. The guy's been there for 7 years and he's still not the best in the world. How long do you have to wait? That's just one example to me. So I think you've got to temper the whole Ian Foster thing and actually hold the players as equally responsible. Is that a fair argument?
Firstly, Hansen coming into the camp, dance of the desperate. This is another sign that they're starting to run out of ideas. No, look, it's always been about coaches at an All Black level. Let's not kid ourselves. Ian Foster was in charge of the Chiefs for a long time, was awful. Dave Rooney comes in and suddenly turns things around. Blackadder was in charge of the Crusaders, did okay with them, got rid of him. Suddenly, Scott Robertson comes in, and immediately the Crusaders go to that next level. I think there is a lot in a coach. Look, Ian Foster, my biggest issue here, I believe it was nothing short of absolute and utter nepotism, his appointment. I said this back in 2018 on another radio station. When it's all said and done, you can put all the rhetoric out there. Ian Foster will be your next All Black coach. He was. Scott Robertson came out and said he felt he was hijacked in that interview. He felt that Graham Henry was already predetermined.
Yeah, it was.
So do we have our
So
do we have our best guy as an All Black coach? No, we don't. Now, you go through his record, though. You do go through his record. And what annoys me now is the default setting for all of these guys is judge me on the World Cup. So you're allowed 4 years of making mistakes. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, Martin, but I'm going to repeat myself from Sunday. So let's talk about the record. Let's put this on the record, okay? So he's the first coach to lose to Argentina. He's then the first coach to lose to Argentina at home. First coach to lose a series since 1994 in New Zealand, which was against Ireland, which was the first time we've ever lost a series to Ireland. First coach to lose opening game of a Rugby World Cup. First biggest record margin loss at a World Cup. Biggest record margin loss against South Africa 2 weeks ago. And so he's just got this track record of records. And I just want to put that on the record.
Yeah,
but apparently I'm supposed to believe it's all part of the master plan. Now, I haven't seen any evolution in the All Blacks game plan since, about 2017. We still just go out and play helter-skelter rugby. Now, we can sit here and blame the players. Absolutely, we can. If there's a shortage of playing depth, it's again because of what Chew and Hansen have done in terms of just killing every other form of the game, and there's no depth and there's nothing coming through. You've got to have a good base if you want the pointy end of the pyramid, and we don't with club rugby and NPC.
Mate, our under-20s came seventh, remember? Okay, so that's the next generation. That's where we're at in New Zealand rugby.
Okay, and I put it back to Chew, I put it back to Hansen, I put it back to all the decisions they made and the erosion of all those other forms of the game. But at the end of the day, too, it is still Ian Foster who picks these players and he sticks with them. It's Ian Foster who was putting Beauden Barrett at fullback when everybody thinks Will Jordan should be at fullback. We saw Beauden Barrett on Saturday kick the ball away like we saw Beauden Barrett do in the semi-final of the Super Rugby against Canterbury, just aimless, mindless kicking. This guy was a great rugby player back in 2015 when we won a World Cup. 8 years on, he is yesterday's man. This is an All Black coach who has put a winger at centre. This is an All Black coach in the starting lineup, and his preferred starting lineup has a second string fullback starting at second five. We learnt nothing from Christian Cullen being played at centre in 99. We've learned nothing from Leon McDonald playing centre in 2003. We saw Jerome Kaino play at lock in our first loss against Ireland in the United States back in 2017. We saw them take Scott Barrett and put him at blindside in the semi-final against England in 2019. He continues to pick these players. And therefore, yes, he does take a lot of the responsibility.
Yeah, I understand.
Yes, the players do need to step up. Yes, they do need to step up. But also, too, you look at the decision-making here and you go, well, hang on a minute, they've got 25 damn staff travelling with this team. Do these players actually ever need to make a decision?
No, they don't. And that's part of the problem, mate. That's part of the
problem. And I think that comes through as well.
Yeah, it does. Look, I think the attitude of the players, mate.
You have to point the finger at Ian Foster.
Okay.
Does anyone honestly not believe that if Scott Robertson's going to come in and make a difference? I do. Scott Robertson will make a big difference.
I think he will, and I will absolutely agree with that. But I also think when you look at that All Black side, you tell me who South Africa, Ireland and France at the moment are going, right, I want that player, that player, that player, that player, that player, and black. Bollocks, mate. They'd be lucky to pick 2 out of our 23. Any of those teams. So that has to be a factor in it as well. We are in a lull in terms of our playing strength at the moment. It's happened before, mate. Look, today in 2009, we lost for the third time in a row to South Africa. Remember the team that year? We lost 3 times to the Yarpies. We lost to France. We even lost to the bloody Barbarians on tour when Ted was in charge. Remember that? And it took another couple of years to actually get that, to recycle those players and get them right.
But you look at guys like James Lowe and Jamison Gibson Park and Bundy Arkey and these players that are allowed to go offshore. I mean, why, you look at Sean Stevenson. Why is he sitting back here in New Zealand? Form player in Super Rugby. We just stick to it. I mean, offer to Ungavasi.
Yeah, I know. Nipo Lalala. I mean, I'm saying the same. We're actually arguing the same things. I mean, I look at the 4 guys that came on. I'm just thinking, Dalton Papali'i, you're a Super Rugby bully. Tupou Vai, really, I mean, you're absent without leave every game. Anton Leonard-Brown, you're in Mr. Invisible. And Nipo Lalala, you were rubbish in 2019. What's changed?
Apologise to me!
All right, let's move on from that then, because there's a couple of other great things about the Rugby World Cup to talk about. I thought the opening weekend was superb, and I thought Fiji versus Wales epitomised it, a cracking game. I also loved England versus Argentina, mate, because I just thought that's how you win a test match. Get pragmatic, New Zealand. Win the bloody game. Stop thinking that we're going to score 9 tries and we've got to play this attacking rugby from everywhere. Mate, you grew up with me, Watto, watching the All Blacks. We were never a great side to watch for most years. We just won games. That was what was good about us. We just won, right?
Oh, look, absolutely. And we've got to go back to winning games. We were texting each other during that game on Saturday when you said the great thing. Start playing test match rugby.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to see.
Yeah.
Sometimes, high risk, high reward. I get it. But sometimes just play the territorial game. Slow things down. Suffocate them. Take the 3 points on offer. Don't kick for the corner. Just win the damn test match. Take the drop goal if it's on out in front. Let's just get the job done. But this is my problem. We still just don't have that evolution in the game. But look, going back to your point, World Rugby have done the right thing with this Rugby World Cup, just cracking games in the first weekend, the first week.
Yeah.
And what that does, it gets everybody engaged from day one, doesn't it? So you've got your best product on display in the first week. You then capture your audience for the entire tournament. And that is a really, really good way of doing things.
Yeah, great tech. Yeah,
but just going back to, and I spoke to commentator Ken Laban over the weekend, and we had a really good discussion. And I wonder whether New Zealand has been heavily affected now. And I wasn't 100% convinced, but not playing the South African teams on a regular basis in Super Rugby. And he came up with a really good point. He said the problem with New Zealand rugby now with our domestic competition with Super Rugby is we're simply just playing constantly in the shallow end, i.e. we're just playing against each other.
Yeah.
We're playing against awful teams, and we're just not.
And our guys become Super Rugby bullies. That's what I call Papali'i. I mean, beating up on the Rebels and beating up on the Reds is one thing, mate, but when it comes to a French forward pack that's looking at you in the eye and going, we don't care, and then all of a sudden you're second best. Let's also talk about the red cards, because tomorrow Tom Fords has to be rescinded or else World Rugby are fools, aren't they?
Of course they do. Yeah, of course they do. But there's been some other contentious issues. I still feel a little bit more for the Pacific Island teams. I felt in the Fiji-Wales game there that, probably should have been a couple of Welsh players gone to the bin in that last 10 minutes, and then Fiji go down the other end and they're given a yellow card. And I just sometimes wonder whether there is a subconscious bias maybe towards some of the Pacific Island teams when they do something. I think when they do something, I think it is.
You're right.
I think it automatically it's more polarizing, and it's probably people have a stereotype around them.
Look, and I think that perception is reality because it just happens over and over. And we saw that with Moala's 10 weeks as opposed to Farrell gets, off straight away on his red card. Yeah, I think you're right. Subconscious. I think there is that bias there. Having said that, though, all Fiji had to do was they had a 4-on-1 overlap at the end, mate. They just had to catch and pass. That's all they had to do.
Yeah. I thought there might have been an upset in the first round, and so far it's just gone on form. I thought Argentina were disappointing, but I certainly didn't see enough in England to convince me that that they're going to beat one of the big sides when it really counts. Same with Wales.
Apologise to me!
2 quick topics to finish with. Up the pars. Were you offended? Who was offended by that? I mean, this is what I hate about New Zealand at the moment. Get a sense of humour, people. The Panthers have every right to take the piddle out of the Warriors up the wires because they dicked us, right? And to the win of the chocolates.
Exactly. So what? They take the mickey out of us.
So what? Have a laugh at yourself.
Who is really upset about it? 1% of people, or is this just some left-wing nut job in the media who decides they need to just turn it into another big issue here and then?
I mean, look, normally I don't like Jerome Luai's posts, mate. I mean, normally, that Luai post after Origin, I just thought was just lame as from sitting by. But this time, I thought he got it right. And just have a laugh at it. I mean, I thought it was funny. I had, and yet here I am reading that Cam George had to get an apology from their CEO. Well, grow the hell up and act like adults, people. Guess what? It's a bit of banter. They gave it to us and we deserved it. Yeah. Simple as that.
And I tell you what, we can go down the path of rugby where everything is just so damn sanitised and wonder why no one's watching it, no one's talking about it because they've taken all of that stuff out of it. This is a gladiatorial game. I mean, look at the fans in English Premier League football, Millwall, Newcastle, Liverpool, Manchester United, mate. Look at the angst they give each other, the songs they sing, and they're only divided by some security and stuff, but it just makes for a wonderful product. You come up with up the wires, they want to turn it around to up the pars. Well, that gives you motivation.
Brilliant.
You have to beat them again.
That's it.
And at the end of the day, it's still putting the focus back on the Warriors. It's still putting focus back on the games. It's letting people talk about it around the water cooler. It gets us even more wound up. It brings us even more united, and it creates that lovely little rivalry between Australia and New Zealand, only sort of more at a micro level.
Yeah, thank you,
hey,
mate.
we're going to talk about the women's rugby.
Well, there's no point because nobody was watching, okay? So, I mean, and look, and I did send a tweet out yesterday to all the mainstream media agencies and said, you were gobbing last year about this growth explosion in women's rugby. And I even read one News Hub article, I think it was, that women's rugby is going to be bigger than the All Blacks now. And of course, it's just words and hot air and a whole lot of BS. And my question was, and I tagged all the mainstream media outlets, when are you going to write the article that nothing has changed? That sounded silence, Mark. You hear that?
I'm just wanting to know when the likes of the Dana Johanssons, did they have their weekend? How many games did they go to this season? How many games of Aupiki Super Rugby? Look, part of the problem with the product here is too, like if you're going to launch a product, you do what the Rugby World Cup did. You go, well, how do we make this the best product? And I think part of it is stop thinking, well, it's a women's game. We've got to have women commentators. Have the best commentators. Get Nisbo, get the likes of the Tony Johnsons calling these games and have these guys doing it, because I think they bring a lot more credibility. I think they make the product a better product. And that is a good starting point. If you want to get people in, present it the best you can present it. We don't have a lot of good women rugby commentators for whatever reason. Hey, but let them organically grow as well. But just putting these commentators that can't talk, putting them in charge of it, and then somehow expecting me to sit down and be engaged. Yeah. But the thing is, I keep coming back to it, Marty. If you want women's sport to be successful, stop writing these antagonising articles where you've got this little underlying theme of, all men are pigs, all men are misogynists. Write an article asking the 2.5 million women in this country, where are they? Why are you not supporting your sport?
That's it. Yeah.
And then stop keep driving this narrative about equity of pay. I mean, I watched the Women's Rugby League on the weekend. Well, I had it on in studio, and there's no one watching the women's NRL. There's no one in the stadiums. But, the article is, we need parity. We need pay parity. No, you don't. It's based on economics, man. What part of this don't you understand? It is a business model. And if you want to get paid, you need to generate that income. Small businesses, small businesses, if you're a small business and you ain't bringing in the money, the government's not going to prop you up and go, look, here's your salary. Well done.
Devlin.
Oh, my goodness me.
The platform.